And I'm delighted to be able to welcome Steve Salee to Pride in Leadership, all the way from New York City. Is that right? New York City or New York State?
I am the first town north of New York City in a town called Pelham, just north of if anybody ever watched the movie The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 about the theft of a subway train. Um, we're
Did you
we're
star
right.
in that, Steve?
I totally starred in that in 1970, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it
So,
was fun.
Steve, I'm going to hand over to you. You're going to talk to us about essential tools for EDI leadership in challenging times. And obviously, you've got very challenging times over there in America at the moment. I'm not going to do a big introduction for you because, well, everyone should have read it on the when they signed up anyway. But I just know that I'll steal your show. So let's not do that. Please, could everyone just give Steve a little online welcome all the way from New York? Thank you, Steve.
Sure, thank you. Oh, and thanks for all the emojis. That's always fun. Hi everybody. Good. I can still say good morning because we're all still in the morning. So it's what 11 closer to noon New York time in the UK and close to 7 a.m. here in New York. So I'm coming to you from Pelham, from right outside New York City. I'm the CEO of Wildfire Strategies. So we're an organizational change firm. We really help teams and organizations to be ready for change and to succeed through change. So whether that's the change of dealing with conflict or organizational structures, the change of strategy, the change of technology, the change of just having to work in an ever-changing, I can say change so many times in a sentence, work environment and world, and how it's going faster, right? And how we have to find ways to to get our equilibrium and our footing in this time and in this world. So I hope what we talk about today will be useful for you. I'm excited for people to share questions in the chat and for this to be very interactive. At the very least, so I can grab a sip of coffee. And I'm just really excited to be here. So we work with organizations across a range of industries, from healthcare to law to furniture companies to bagel businesses to really just a whole range of different organizations. And Wildfire's recently expanded to the UK. So we've been building business there and building a network there, and that's been a lot of fun. So I'm just at a personal level. I'm a gay dad with a husband, 3 teenagers, and 2 dogs. Um, the kids, my twins are just starting university. My younger one is a rising senior. I'm heavily medicated all the time. That's not true. But they're amazing, and it's just thank you for laughing at that. I appreciate that. So, we're yeah, so I bring the perspective of being a gay man and of having been a primary parent also, to this, and starting a business very slowly as a primary parent, um to so I've had a lot of the stereotypical mom experiences that the parents have. So that's been part of my experience as well. Claire, thanks for mentioning your report, your barriers to reach report, and you caught over 1,000 people in this report, right? So that's not nothing. That's a lot. That's
It's a
you.
lot, and it took a lot of chivying and rallying and all of that stuff. It's not an easy number to reach, I have to say. We'd aimed originally for 200, and we got to 200 quite quickly. So then we were filled with all this confidence that it was going to be super easy and set the new target of 1,000. But I think it's a good number, and it means that we've got all of these great experiences that we're talking about in the report as well. So yeah,
Right.
it's been good.
You got some meaningful data and real experiences. I think that's a powerful distinction where people are talking about their real lived experiences and their challenges and their strengths as well. So what I'm hoping folks can do, if you could just throw if you want to put your name in, where you're located and the type of work that you do, if you could just throw that into the chat just as an introduction, just help me to know more about who's here today. And also just later in the session, you'll need something to write on. So whether that's your keyboard or a piece of paper, just to start to pull some thoughts together. So um, so we're just really, really excited to be together. I am going to, hey, John. So I'm going to share my slides so that I'm not just talking at you for the next hour. And that's interesting because they just, okay, so they just disappeared, which is weird. Oh, I know why. Okay.
Oh, we love it when that happens.
I
Everybody's worst
mean, I
nightmare.
did this before we started, right? And then it went away. But here we go. Okay, now I'm hoping everybody can see these. So I'll run through these and pull up our chat as well. So, oh, great. Hi, everybody. Matt, I'm sure you're not a boring lawyer. I'm sure you're not boring as a lawyer. So I believe you're a lawyer, but you're not a boring lawyer. Hi, Ella. It's nice to meet you. John, Julia Whitney, nice to see you. Steph, good to meet you. Martin, Ksenia, okay, nice to meet you. Frank, great. Chris, Gail, Caroline, Brent, Martha, Tracy, Katie, Alex, Olivia. So, okay, I'm saying everybody's name, but I should probably just keep going. But anyway, it's really nice to have everybody here and to have your experiences. So I want to talk a little bit about, the times that we're living in, right? So, so being a leader in today's climate is not easy, right? So regardless of what kind of work you have, and we've got a diversity of trades here, you need some tools to help you navigate in high pressure environments. Stuart, EDI lead at the NHS. Today we're going to talk about how to identify the things that can block productive and inclusive leadership, both for yourself and for your teams. We're going to talk about how to build some confidence around and resilience and adaptability that you need in order to lead inclusively. So I hope we come away with just a clear understanding of what gets in the way of inclusive leadership, because there are very human things that get in the way of our successes as leaders. And I'll use our readiness for change framework, which helps people to understand where we get stuck and how we can move forward as leaders and for ourselves too, right? So this is very much a human-centered model. I want to take a moment to look at what's getting in the way and to think about what are the challenges that occur personally and in teams that get us stuck. So we see 5 areas where people tend to get stuck in their work for themselves and for their teams. And excuse me, we call these the 5 wounds. They're very human. They happen to us personally. They happen to us in our personal relationships and our work relationships. And they get us stuck as team members and as individuals. So the 5 are taking things personally, fixed state thinking, scapegoating, abdicating, and fracturing. So taking things personally is when it can be in a personal relationship, or a work relationship. We're talking about getting our new product to market, but we're actually arguing about that thing we never resolved last week when we got into an argument at the water cooler. It can be, it often happens in high pressure environments where we're moving very quickly, and it's hard to take the time to resolve any personal conflicts. So we tend to get stuck by taking things personally. Fixed state thinking is that space where we say, this is how we've always done it. We always do things this way. It's, this is just the way it is here, right? It's being stuck on a way of doing things. Scapegoating is where there's a bad apple or a toxic person on our team, and they're always the problem. It's always their fault. Abdicating is, well, I don't have the power to change that. So I'm just, I'm not really going to get involved, or I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to kick it upstairs to my boss. And then fracturing, the fifth wound that we see is when teams get splintered out into different groups. It usually happens when there's a revolving door of leadership, when you have some weak leadership and the team breaks out into these separate groups so they can get their work done. But what ends up happening is it's like Lord of the Flies, where there's just a lot of conflict and a lot of and it slows things down. So we've got a few polls that we're going to be taking during today's session, just to get a sense of where you are in each of these areas. So our first poll is to understand where you get stuck as a leader or as a team at work, and Gabby's going to post that. Just if you can answer the question of, as a leader or a team member, where do you find yourself getting stuck the most? I'll give you a minute to answer that. We can have the little horse race of how each question's getting answered. Interesting. Give you another moment to answer. Okay, anybody else jumping in? Okay. So it sounds like the biggest example is when people take things personal. So and followed by fixed state thinking or abdicating and fixed state thinking. So we see all of these different challenges in our teams and our organizations, right? So when we take things personally, it's getting stuck in that back and forth. We're sitting at the table and we're ostensibly talking about, like I said before, getting a product to market or taking good care of a patient. And we might be disagreeing about the approach, but what ends up happening is that you'll say something to me that I might feel is a personal barb instead of just a professional disagreement. And I'll take that personally. And then I'll respond personally. And then you'll feel like that's a personal barb. And then we're off to the races and we're back and forth. And that's a really hard place to be. So one of the things about taking things personally is that about 75% of conflict in workplaces is personal. 100% of that is unproductive, because it's valuable for us to be able to have disagreements at a professional level with our shared focus in mind, but it's completely unproductive to get into that tit for tat place. So the solve for taking things personally is notice, name, and reframe. So the first thing to notice is what's going on in your body. What are you feeling physically? Where are you getting stuck physically? You'll notice it, right? If you're if you're having a conversation with a colleague and it's starting to feel personal, you'll feel it in your throat, in your chest. You'll feel it, you'll have that place where you feel a little bit stuck. And so noticing that, where am I? What's happening here? Are we able to have sort of a good back and forth banter of like, well, I don't really agree with that. I think we should try to do it this way. We really should sell the product in this kind of store. And your colleague says, well, yeah, but I think we should sell it in that kind of store, because and you can have that disagreement and that feels fun and it flows. But if you're getting to that place where it's starting to feel personal, you'll notice that. So notice is the first one. The second one is to name, and it's not, and it's more where I'm noticing that maybe we're getting off track here. I'm starting to feel like we're getting into a bit of a disagreement instead of a good discussion. Let's maybe see if we can get back on track, and that's the reframing piece. What are our shared goals? the reframing is, what are our shared goals and where do we want to go? So that's how we address taking things personally. I've got an article on this, which I can put. Is it okay if I put it? You know what? I'll put it in the chat later so that I don't get out of the slides. But I have an article on this that goes into a lot more detail, which I am happy to do later. And I guess, can everybody? You know what? I'm just realizing. Did everybody see the poll results? Or up until that point? Okay, great. Because I just realized there were 2 buttons for me to push that I didn't push. Okay. Technology. So, so these are areas where we get stuck as individuals and as teams. And this is, and again, it's very human. These things happen, right? There's always going to be that person who on a team who's the person who is the scapegoat. They're the canary in the coal mine. They're the person who's getting who's irritating everybody, right? It happens. It constantly. It's present in every team. Oh, thank you, Crystal. Crystal on my team just posted the article. Thanks, and thanks, Jane. I'm glad you love a poll. The thing about those, and I'm just going to back up a little bit. So the thing about scapegoating is when you have a toxic person and they're really irritating, they are information. They're providing actual valuable information about what's going on your team. So these are all very human. And thanks, Crystal, again for the article. People can go and read more about these 5 wounds, areas that teams get stuck, and then some ways to begin to heal them. We can certainly talk more about that too. So I'll go on to this question, which is around our strengths as LGBTQ plus leaders, right? So at times it's hard to feel our strengths, and Claire, in your report, you identified a lot of areas of significant challenge that people feel, and both, at a personal level and an organizational level. It's hard to come out every single time you go into a new environment. It's hard to or meet new colleagues. It's hard to function as an LGBTQ plus person in the workplace and as a leader. How are we supposed to show up? Who are our role models? But we have a lot of strengths. There's been research from the University of Bath, from the National Institutes of Health in the United States, which is unfortunately probably no longer going to be a thing. The Ohio State University, a bunch of others. There are some great books. Breaking the Rainbow Ceiling by Layla McKay, who's a terrific NHS leader. Forging Queer Leaders. There are a bunch of books out there. So we've got some amazing strengths as LGBTQ plus leaders. Resilience, adaptiveness, authenticity, advocacy, and justice, collaboration, and community orientation. We're going to run a second poll, and I just want to get your sense of, where do you see yourself as having strengths as an LGBTQ plus leader? And if you're an ally, an LGBTQ plus ally, please answer the poll as well. It's like a little horse race. I love this. I think we're going to see who wins. Like, my money's on resilience. $50 on resilience. No, well, yeah, we'll see. See what happens. Resilience wins. Okay. Wow. My horse won. I know nothing about horses. So this is really interesting. So we have, and there are other strengths, by the way, besides these. There's empathy and courage and strategic problem solving and inclusion and social justice. These are all other strengths that LGBTQ plus leaders have. And so we bring some really powerful strengths to the table. And these are essential in change, right? These are important parts of being ready for change and navigating change. So I want us to keep these in mind as we look at what it takes to be ready for change and what it takes to be to navigate through change, because we need all of these both for ourselves and for our teams. We have the capacity to bring these to our organizations and to our teams as we're working in ever faster moving environments, and in ever more complex environments. So these are the kinds of things that are important for us to have. Yeah, so Nevin, you talk about community can be restive and defensive. Could you say a little more about that, if you'd like? I'm curious about that. Yeah. Yeah. So we well, if you'd like to add more about that at some point, please do. So we've got some real strengths here, and these are places that we can leverage as leaders. So let's talk about how we leverage these strengths, right? So in times of political uncertainty and backsliding and general disequilibrium, you've got some tools to navigate in these times, right? So there's a lot of change that's happening. We've got legislative and policy changes and political pushback. There are sustainability initiatives that are coming in that are really wonderful and important, and they're big changes. Shifting strategies and processes, partnerships or mergers, strategy rollouts, technology implementations. These are large-scale changes. They're increasingly fast and complex, and they're coming whether you want them and you're prepared or you're not. So this is our third poll, which is to ask the question, which of these kinds of changes are you facing in your organizations? Again, we have a little horse race. So far, shifting processes and strategies is number one. Policy and legislation changes are number two. Political blowback is certainly a big piece of that. So shifting processes and strategies seems to be our number one. Any other final adds to the poll? I think that's going to be our winner. So so the biggest kind of change that people are facing is are shifting processes and strategies, where your organization is going in one direction and then it's changing and going in another direction. And we've been doing some work with the NHS, and that's that's certainly both the experience as a user of NHS services and as and for people who are working in the NHS system, that is a huge focus and story right now, is what's happening with the strategic changes and processes at the NHS right now. And so as we as you're going through these big kinds of processes and changes, what we see is, these are that a lot of these fail, that they a lot of these changes are unsuccessful because people aren't ready for change. So 60 to 70% of strategies and technology implementations fail. 70 to 90% of partnerships and mergers fail. And the reason is because people aren't ready for change. And sorry, I'm just trying to go back to the chats, which I can't do, but so so when you think about these major changes, we want to think about, what does it take for us to navigate through these kinds of changes? You can't lead change if you're not ready for change. And you can't be a successful participant in change if you're not ready for change. And this isn't your fault, right? what happens is that organizations tend to focus on the tactics and the outcomes of change. We have a new strategy, we're going to end up with a smaller, leaner national health system, or we're going to have we're going to end up with this, great new technology. And we're going to start from where we are in our current state, and we're going to get to successful use of technology. But the steps to get there aren't just tactical, they're not just functional. They require people. They require the ability of people to see themselves in the change and to participate in that change and to feel supported in that change and to work together in that change and be on the same page about that change. And that's a lot of moving parts. So there's this human side of change that is that's really the core of change in organizations, and it's the part that gets lost the quickest. There's so much conversation now about AI, and by the way, AI is a term we are all throwing around, and we mean 50 different things by it. So to be really specific about what we mean, what it is that we're adopting, what is the strategy we're adopting, what is the technology we're adopting, what is it going to do, what are the goals of it, how is it going to impact us, where is it going to potentially harm, and how do we address that? So to be very specific and clear about what it is that we're changing. So there's this very human side of change that we have to address first before we really successfully address change effectively. And the great news here is that as LGBTQ plus leaders, you have some pretty terrific skills to facilitate successful change. So I want to talk about our readiness for change framework. So we think of readiness for change as our individual and collective, our team ability and individual ability to successfully implement a new strategy or a new process, to successfully implement a new technology, to successfully implement a merger. So it's our individual and team readiness to make those changes. And there are 5 categories that we think of in terms of readiness. And there are more than 5, but these are the top 5 that we see. The first one is awareness. It's what is it that we know about this change? What is it? What's the information that we have? How clear is it? How specific is it? How widespread is it? Do I know it and other members of my team don't know it? Are we being secretive about it? Are we being open about it? So that's around awareness. Skills. This is what we functionally know in order to be able to implement change. So it's our leadership skills, our communication skills, our technology skills, our strategic implementation skills, the ability to take a project from a big idea to something tactical and implement it. It's our skills around how we navigate across teams from different kinds of organizations and different cultures. So these are just some examples of areas of skill that we need in order to be ready for change, in order to be ready for a new strategy, a new process. There's excitement. Like how do we feel? How do we feel about it? The awareness is what we know, but excitement is how we feel. So are we excited about it? Are we on board? Are we scared? How do we actually feel about this change? The next one is endorsement, which is the support we have from our leadership and our organizations. So where are our leaders? And endorsement from above, but it can also be across peers. Endorsement, it can also be for endorsement from staff and teams. So it's what's the level of support that we have in order to navigate a complex change. Alignment is how is our team working together in order to make change. So those are the 5 main areas that we see in terms of readiness for change. I'm curious if anybody has has other areas that they see as critically important, um, in terms of Jane, I'm just going back to your point in terms of shifting processes and strategies that include. And I'm sorry, I was having trouble pulling up the chat. You're talking about shifting processes and strategies, including changes to staffing and allocation of budgets. Absolutely. Those are and changes in staffing and allocation of budgets are a reflection of those are the manifestations of some other change in your organization that may or may not be clear. So there might be confusion around the staffing, confusion around the allocation of budgets, and that can shut down our readiness for that kind of change. Frank talks about legislative changes are working, causing you to work reactively rather than proactively. Absolutely. We're experiencing this very much in the US right now, where law firms and all kinds of organizations are having to shift gears constantly to try to keep up with the barrage of legislative changes and executive orders and the tariff issues and so on. So that's shutting down. That's throwing us down the Maslow scale to our just taking care of ourselves and defending ourselves at a much more basic level. And that's really hard to be at higher levels of leadership, to be able to think in flow and to be able to work more collaboratively. So those kinds of external changes are having a big impact on our ability to work effectively. Right. So artificial, right, AI is a huge issue. Yeah, denial of problems and desire to maintain status quo, and being defensive about that. That's part of the category of fixed state thinking that I was talking about before, in terms of the wounds that we see on teams. So that makes it harder for people to be ready for change. So we can see that there are a lot of areas where it's difficult to be ready. Ready for change, and our challenge around getting ready for change. So Julie is talking about David Rock's SCARF model and thinking through change. So I actually don't know David's model very well, Julia. But I think, do you want to just throw in the chat or jump on for a sec to summarize it?
Sure. So the principle is that David Rock found that humans have a reaction to 5 things that triggers the parts of the brain that are triggered when you have a physical threat. Same thing with a kind of emotional, social threat. And so those threats are threats to status, threats to certainty, threats to autonomy, threats to relatedness, and threats to fairness.
So I think actually these fit in different categories here. So fairness can show up around fairness and relatedness can show up in the alignment category. Status can show up around endorsement. It can show up around excitement. Like we can feel, if we're feeling that there's a threat to our status, then that's going to knock our excitement off the pedestal, because we're scared, right? We're scared about a change. When change comes, our inadequacies or our imposter syndrome, and things that particularly come up for LGBTQ leaders, really show up, right? So it's harder to be, it gets, if you're afraid of change, or you have a deep-seated fear that you don't have the capacity to navigate that change, even though you may very well have that capacity, your excitement level is going to go down. So yeah, so those are great. Those are great ways of thinking about this. And I think it's that threat piece, like you said, Julia. There's the physical threat and the emotional threat, that both, that certainly the more emotional threat that shows up, and it's and like you said, it's perceived, right? This is the idea around readiness for change, is it's helping us get to where our perceptions are showing up, and to understand them, and to really look at them and pause and think about them. So I want to oh, thanks. Exactly. Scarf isn't just something you wear. It's also status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And I think, that's another example too, that there are different models that are looking at different pieces of change, right? So we talk about Kotter's model, right? Kotter's 8-step change model, and it's looking at structure. Thanks, Martha. Thanks for joining us. It's looking at a lot of the structural pieces. Our model is really focused a lot on the people side. So it's so there are lots of different ways to look at this. So I want you to so this is the part where you're taking out your piece of paper, or your tablet, or just writing in your head, and I want you to think about the area that you indicated in the poll around the major change area that you're dealing with right now. So a lot of people noted changes in process or strategy, but we also had changes in technology and other changes in policies that are having an impact. So whichever one of those categories it is for you, if you can just take a moment to think about what is it that I know right now about a change that's happening? What is it that I know about the new process that's coming? What do I know about it in terms of it overall? What do I know about the value of it, the implications of it? So just thinking about where you are currently on this, and where you are, what is your level of awareness right now? And you may discover that you actually don't know as much as you want to or need to know about this change. And just to say, the whole purpose of this approach, this readiness for change approach, is to slow down what is moving so fast around us, and to really be able to think about it intentionally, to say, what am I ready for, and what do I want to be ready for? How am I going to be ready for whatever this change is, so that I'm really connected around that intentionality. So the second part of this question is, in order to be ready for this change, this new policy, this new strategy, what is it that you need to know? What do you need to know about it overall? What do you need to know about its value, its implications, its impact? So those are that's the first question. So it's, what is it you know right now, and what is it that you need to know? That's the first question. So, and if you have any examples that you want to share in the chat as we're going through this process, please do so. The second question around readiness for change is, what skills do you currently have to make this change? What skills do you have to adopt a new strategy, to adopt a new process? What skills do you have to navigate a political or policy change? What are your communication skills, your conflict resolution skills, your technical skills, your team management skills, your delegation skills, your role clarity skills? What are the skills that you have to make these changes? And then the second question is, what skills would you have to develop in order to navigate this change successfully? So which in these areas around communication and technology and process skills, deep subject matter skills would you need to develop in order to make the change that you're navigating right now? And what resources do you need in order to develop those? And, and are those available? And how do you get those to be available? So to start to think about what are the skills you have and what are the skills that you need in order to make change. The next one is around excitement. How do you feel about the change right now? What's your level? What's your feeling about it? Are you excited about it? Are you feeling, are you fearful? Are you feeling lonely or lost or energized or overwhelmed? Or these are all things, and a lot of these things can happen simultaneously. And then what is it you need in order to be excited about this change? So in order for me to be excited about it, I would need to feel safe. I would need to feel like I can have a conversation with my boss. I would need to feel like I can say, I don't know how to motivate my team around this. I need to be able, in order to be excited about this, I need to do some reading. I need to have a really frank conversation with my therapist about my, my feeling of anxiety here. I need more support at home. These are all different ways that that we can get connected to a change and feel more excited about it, and be ready for it. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes there's not a way to be excited about it. So yep. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, so Kotter's got a great structured model around organizational change, and it's one that we use. What I find is that in order to be effective in the Kotter model, which really walks you through the process, and it talks about getting people on board, and it talks about moving through change, is that it needs a piece around mind and more of an orientation around mindset and connection at a human level. So it's taking the Kotter model, and we like to think of adding readiness for change as sort of a precursor and sort of a parallel process along the way, to use while you're using Kotter. So I would just recommend, thinking about it that way, maybe, Stuart. This is in no way a replacement for that. This is really the parallel, the human side of it, while you're looking at the structural side of it. So the next category around endorsement is, what supports do you have from your leadership now in order to make change successful? Do you have the time to adopt the change? Is there the space to ask questions? Are you allowed to make mistakes? Are you allowed to be wrong? A lot of change gets adopted with unrealistic timeframes, right? We're putting Salesforce in, and you have 3 months to do it, not only for yourself to be able to use it, but for everybody around you to get used to how to use it with you, right? So these changes take a lot of time. So what kind of endorsement or support would you need to have in order to be ready for change? So to start to think about that, think about it that way. And then the last one is around alignment. So how well does your team work together in terms of change right now? How well do you support one another? Do you talk through challenges? Do you have the psychological safety on your team to be able to raise your hand and say, I'm not sure I understand what we're doing here. I'm not sure, I think we're all talking about a new strategy, but I'm confused about exactly what we mean. Like, do you have the safety to have those kinds of conversations? And if you're set up for change, what would need to be different and to be working differently in order for that change to be successful? So this is around alignment. In order to be able to give yourselves grace when things don't go well, to be able to share best practices, to be able to talk through challenges, to provide one another with support, what would that look like if you were really well aligned for a new strategy or a new technology, if you were really well connected and put together as a team. So these together are, you know, as you know, as I'm talking here, feel free to share any examples that you have in the chat, but these are, you know, together, this is really your readiness for change snapshot is understanding the current state and the desired state for awareness and skills and excitement and endorsement and alignment. What is it that where are you currently? And what is it that you need in order to get to that desired state? And, you know, from bosses, from colleagues, from the organization, from yourself, from family, from community. So what do you need from each of those categories in order to get to your desired state? And the second piece is, what are you ready? What is it that you can commit to? What are you ready to commit to go from your current state to your desired state? Right? So where are you, and where are you going to get to, and what do you need to get to? What is it that you can commit to? So this together is your readiness for change snapshot, where you are currently, where you want to get to, what you need in order to get there, and what you can commit to in order to get there. So if anybody wants to share an example in the chat, please do. And Claire, I think you have, and so these are our main categories for readiness for change. So I want us to think about your leadership strengths and what makes you uniquely strong and as an LGBTQ plus leader, right? So how does your resilience help in this time? You know, this is your strong core. This is your ability for your strength for yourself and for your team. It helps you to inspire yourself and others to be strong in times of change. So that's something special that you bring as an LGBTQ plus leader. Your adaptability is your flexibility to maneuver through change. And that's a great skill that you can bring as a roadmap to other people. Your authenticity is your heart. It's your ability to share your complex feelings about change and model that for others while continuing to proceed through it. Your sense of advocacy and justice are your powers to speak and to show your how you value change and when something doesn't work, right? So you can to be able to speak up about that candidly and productively and positively. And your abilities around collaboration and community are your powers to connect. Right? This is your power to bring people together in times of change. So you have all of these amazing strengths as LGBTQ plus leaders to bring to change, to connect to. And while we certainly have challenges, and we certainly work in challenging workplaces and challenging political environments that make it harder for us in some ways, we also have these amazing strengths. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the emotional labor of all of this, right? Because when we're bringing all of these strengths to the table and we're bringing them in the face of some adversity as LGBTQ plus leaders, I want you to think for a minute about how you take care of yourselves in these times, right? So, in terms of how do you connect with community and give yourselves grace, how you take care of your health and give yourself physical space to be able to recharge your batteries so that you can bring these leadership strengths to your colleagues and to yourself, right? So I always want to end on that because I think this isn't, you know, we particularly as LGBTQ plus leaders, I think we're always feeling the pressure to bring more and improve ourselves. And I think, you know, having that space to take care of ourselves in all of this is really is especially important. So I want to thank you, Claire. Thank you, Gabby, for having me today. I hope today was a really valuable session for people, that it was food for thought for people. We're going to have we have a 1 hour Spark consult that to give away if you connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn, if you go to the Crystal on my team just put that link in the chat. So if you go there and you leave a response in the pinned post, we will, if you do that today, we will draw a name, and we'll get back to you with the winner of a 1-hour Spark consult, which will go into a much deeper dive on what we've been talking about today. So just really excited to be part of this community, excited to be part of the LGBTQ plus community in the UK, and the business community there, and to be part of Pride and Leadership. And Claire, again, thank you so much.